In the stillness of the night, Sarah lay in her bed, a storm of emotions swirling inside her. The rain beat relentlessly against the window, each drop a reminder of the upheaval she had been facing. She stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing through her mind like a scene from a movie, each frame colored by doubt and fear. Would she ever find peace again? Would she ever feel whole? Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a warm presence stirred beside her. It was Jake, her golden retriever, who had been her anchor through the tempests of life. With his bright eyes and boundless energy, he had entered her life like a ray of sunshine piercing through dark clouds. But tonight, even his usual exuberance was tempered, his soulful gaze mirroring her uneasy thought as Sarah reached down to stroke Jake's fur. She felt the familiar weight of her worries. Ever since she lost her job, the pressure to make ends meet had hung over her like a suffocating blanket. It was as if the world had crumbled beneath her feet, and only Jake's gentle companionship prevented her from spiraling into despair. He was not just a pet. He was her lifeline, her source of unconditional love. "Jake," she whispered, her voice barely rising above the sound of the rain. "What do you think we'll do tomorrow? Another round of job hunting? Or maybe I should give up altogether?" She could almost hear him replying, his tail thumping softly against the bed as if to say, "I'm still here. We're in this together." Just as she was about to sink back into her worries, there was a loud crash outside. Startled, her heart raced as a wave of fear washed over her. What was that? She gasped, instinctively pulling Jake closer. He bolted upright, ears pinned back, ready to protect her from the unknown. "It's okay. It's just the storm," she assured him, but even she struggled to sound convincing. The flickering lights in the room only added to the unsettling atmosphere, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Jake remained tense, every muscle in his body alert. Sarah got up, the cool wood of the floor sending a shiver through her. She felt small in that moment, powerless against the chaos outside. "Let's check it out," she said more to herself than to him. Her voice a soft tremor of determination. Together they approached the window, where sheets of rain poured down, obscuring the world outside. The horizon flickered intermittently with flashes of lightning, illuminating the dark landscape. Sarah's heart pounded in rhythm with the thundering storm. What if something was wrong? What if she had to face it alone? But Jake's reassuring presence reminded her that she didn't have to be afraid. With another flash of lightning, she caught sight of a figure, probably just a neighbor dealing with the storm. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, turning back to Jake, whose eyes were locked onto hers, calm and steady. "Let's just stay in, okay? We'll weather this together," she said, returning to the warmth of the blankets. Jake followed her back to bed, curling up beside her, his soft fur a cocoon of comfort. She tapped her arm around him, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. In that moment, she could almost convince herself that everything would be all right as the storm howled outside. Sarah closed her eyes and let fatigue wash over her. But sleep was elusive. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Images of job interviews, where she had failed to impress, resurfaced, each more cringeworthy than the last. Thoughts of unpaid bills also loomed like dark clouds, casting a shadow over her spirit. Just as despair threatened to take hold, Jake moved closer, his warmth enveloping her. She found solace in his presence, that invisible thread of connection that anchored her to the present. "It's just a job, right?" she mused aloud. "There are other opportunities. I just have to keep trying." The rain continued to pour, but inside, a quiet determination began to bloom. If Jake could be so fearless, so unwavering, why couldn't she be the same? In the stillness, with only the sound of the storm as a backdrop, she promised herself that she would not let her worries consume her. "Tomorrow, we'll make a plan," she whispered, Tony curled to his soft ear. "You'll help me, won't you?" Jake lifted his head and met her gaze, as if to say, "Always." An unspoken bond gave her the strength to believe in better days. Gradually, the adrenaline that had propelled her through the evening began to wane, replaced by a heavy drowsiness. With Jake settled against her side, Sarah surrendered to the lure of sleep, letting the sound of the storm fade into the background. Just as she drifted off, she felt a sudden warmth against her hand. Jake shifted closer, snuggling in as if instinctively knowing she needed him most. It was a simple gesture, yet it filled her heart to the brim, unbeknownst to them both. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, there was a flicker of hope. Tomorrow might bring more challenges, but they would take them on together. With renewed energy, she sighed, curling up tightly with her furry companion, as dreams of brighter days danced in her mind. Tonight, she had Jake. They had each other, and somehow that made everything feel a little bit more bearable. A morning of uncertainty, the dawn arrived cloaked in a thick mist, the kind that made the world outside look ethereal and dreamlike. Sarah blinked against the soft morning light and rolled over, expecting to see Jake sprawled out beside her, snoring gently. To her surprise, he was already sitting at the edge of the bed, alert and watchful, as if he had sensed her awakening. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she murmured, scratching the back of his neck. Jake responded with a happy wag of his tail, and in that moment, all the worries of yesterday began to melt away, replaced by the simple joy of their daily routine. Today would be different, she decided. Today, they would stride confidently into the world and confront their challenges together. "Let's get some breakfast," she said, swinging her legs off the bed and feeling the cool floor beneath her feet. Jake bounded into the kitchen ahead of her, his energy infectious. As she poured kibble into Jake's bowl, Sarah glanced out the window. The mist hung heavily in the air, wrapping the neighborhood in a shroud of uncertainty. There was something relaxing about it, but closer to her heart, an unsettling feeling simmered. Perhaps it was remnants of the storm from last night, or maybe it was anxiety over the looming job hunt. After Jake finished eating, Sarah brewed a cup of coffee, hoping the caffeine would dispel some of her unease. She took a deep sip, savoring the warmth as it coursed through her. "All right, buddy," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Time to face the day." Their first stop was the park, where the fog hung low over the ground. It cast everything in a soft blur, transforming the familiar landscape into something surreal. Sarah and Jake trotted along the damp path, the air rich with the scent of earth and rain. She felt a sense of excitement brewing. Perhaps today would be a day full of new beginnings. Halfway through their walk, they stumbled upon a small, crowded festival happening in the park. Colorful tents were set up, and the laughter of children echoed, filling the air with an infectious energy. Food vendors lined the path, offering everything from pretzels to funnel cakes. "Look at all this," Sarah said, her eyes wide with surprise. She felt a tingle of excitement rise in her chest, a distraction from her worries. Jake pulled at his leash, eager to investigate. "All right, let's check it out," she agreed, her heart lifting. As they wandered through the festival, she couldn't help but smile at the joy surrounding her. Children played games, families gathered for photos, and musicians filled the area with cheerful tunes. Jake thrived in the excitement, his tail wagging furiously as he greeted every passerby with enthusiasm, but a small shadow loomed at the back of her mind. The job hunt waited for her, an obligation hanging heavy in her thoughts. She felt the tug of anxiety creeping back in as she turned the corner to a booth advertising local job opportunities. For a fleeting moment, she hesitated, the familiar dread gnawing at her. "Let's do this," she whispered to herself, forcing a smile as she approached the booth. The woman manning it greeted her warmly. "Hi there. Looking for a job?" "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her stomach. Jake sat patiently beside her, sensing the shift in her mood. "Great, we have openings in various fields. What are you interested in?" the woman asked, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "I recently worked in marketing, but I'm open to new opportunities," Sarah said, her confidence slowly returning. She explained her previous experience, noticing how Jake's presence eased her nerves. He was a familiar anchor in a sea of uncertainty. The conversation flowed, and as they discussed potential positions, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope flicker to life. It was a reminder that she didn't have to navigate this journey alone. Jake's reassuring presence was always there, pushing her to take that leap of faith. After parting ways with the booth, Sarah and Jake continued exploring the festival. They stopped at a food stall where Sarah indulged in a chocolate takeover pretzel. Jake sat patiently, looking up at her with big, expectant eyes. "All right, I won't forget you," she laughed, breaking off a piece and giving it to him. He didn't stand on ceremony. He devoured it with delight, wagging his tail even faster now. The laughter and joy of the festival were infectious, momentarily distracting her from her worries. Just when Sarah thought she could let go, she overheard a conversation between two women nearby. Their laughter turned to whispers, and as she leaned in to listen, she caught fragments of their words. Lost my job last week, and my bills are piling up. Reality crashed back in like a wave. The joy that had filled her heart a moment ago faded, and a familiar weight settled on her shoulders. Jake sensed her change in mood, nudging her gently with his nose. I know, she said softly, crouching down to meet his gaze. It's hard, but we'll figure it out together, won't we? With renewed purpose, Sarah took a deep breath. She had faced her fair share of challenges, and while the road ahead was uncertain, she had Jake cheering her on. Steeling herself, she decided to embrace the positive vibe she'd encountered at the fair and return to the job booth to ask more questions. But before she could make her way back, a child careened past, laughing and chasing a balloon twisting in the wind. The little one bumped into Jake, who barked happily, thinking it was a game. The child giggled in delight, and Sarah couldn't help but smile at the innocent joy that moment brought them. See? Life keeps throwing surprises at us, she told Jake, who tilted his head as if to echo her sentiment. Let's grab a coffee and sit for a bit. They found a cozy little corner near a fountain, its gentle bubbling creating a serene atmosphere. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting warm rays that danced on the water's surface. As she sat sipping her coffee, she could feel the knot in her chest slowly loosening. Suddenly, a sharp bark disrupted her serenity. Jake had spotted another dog across the way, a majestic Bernese mountain dog, leash-free and gallivanting towards them. Jake leapt up, ready to make a new friend. The two dogs engaged in a lively game of chase, their barks echoing around them, laughter and cheers rising. From other festival goers, "It's good to see you so happy, buddy," she murmured, watching them play. The sight sent a warmth spreading through her heart, reminding her that not all her days had to be filled with worry. There was joy to be found, even in the smallest moments, but as the sun started to dip lower in the sky, a nagging thought reminded her of her responsibilities. The darkening clouds began to creep back into her mind, but just as fast, Jake bounded back to her side, panting but exhilarated. All right, Jake, we've had our fun, she said, ruffling his fur. Time to head home. Jake wagged his tail, but looked back at his canine friend for a brief moment, torn between loyalty and the excitement of companionship. As they walked away from the festival, Sarah took one last glance back. It was a reminder that there was still beauty and joy in this unpredictable journey called life. Jake trotted faithfully beside her, the perfect companion in every sense. Once home, Sarah and Jake snuggled on the couch, the weight of the day settling comfortably. The room was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of Jake adjusting his position. Perhaps it was the festival's energy lingering in her veins. Or maybe it was the joy of seeing Jake so happy, but Sarah felt determined to face whatever challenges awaited her. She would apply for the job she had come across, and together with Jake, they would navigate this path. As she settled into the silence of her home, she found herself wondering what the future would bring. Uncertainty lay ahead, but with Jake by her side, she felt emboldened to tackle it head-on. One final glance at her furry companion, and she knew tomorrow would be filled with possibilities. Together, as they always had been, they would face whatever came next. Shadows of doubt, the sun rose with a brightness that seemed almost unnatural after the moody, rain-soaked days they had endured. It illuminated Sarah's small apartment, transforming the familiar into a canvas of warmth and light. It was a new day, a day she had resolved to seize with both hands. Jake, ever the optimist, had already bounded out of bed, his tail wagging. In excitement for what lay ahead, as they prepared for their morning walk, Sarah felt a swell of determination. Today was the day she would begin sending out her resume, taking a proactive step towards reclaiming her sense of purpose. But deep down, a whirlpool of anxiety churned. What if they didn't want her? What if she wasn't good enough anymore? Let's go, buddy, she said, shaking off her doubts as they stepped out into the crisp morning air. The neighborhood was awakening, people watering their gardens and children catching the school bus. The world seemed to hum with life, and for a moment, Sarah let that energy envelop her as they walked through the park. Jake was eager, pulling her along as his nose led him into every nook and cranny, chasing down scents that only he could detect. You're full of energy today. Got any secrets I should know? She laughed, scratching behind his ears. He looked up with those sparkling brown eyes, and she could swear he understood her every word. But the moment of levity was fleeting. As they passed the very booth where she had found job opportunities a few days prior, her heart sank at the memory. What if she was met with indifference? What if they had filled all positions? The looming uncertainty clawed at her again. Just breathe, Sarah, she told herself, taking a deep inhale of the cool morning air. She felt Jake nudge her leg, grounding her in the moment. Okay, we can do this. After their walk, the two returned home. Sarah sat in her small kitchen, the laptop open before her, its screen reflecting the apprehension on her face. Jake lay at her feet, a fluffy guardian watching over her. With a deep breath, she opened her email and began to draft applications for various positions. Hours passed, each submission accompanied by a growing sense of hope and dread. Would they respond? Would she even get a phone interview? With every click of the send button, she felt a mix of empowerment and vulnerability washing over her. But amid the typing and retyping, a sudden pang of anxiety gripped her. What if the future ended up being just a series of dead ends? What if she had to face her fears without the safety net of a steady job? She could feel her heart race as her mind spiraled into doubt. Jake, do you think I should keep going? She whispered, glancing down at him. He looked back up, tilting his head in that adorable way, and she swore he nodded. All right, she chuckled as if he had given her a pep talk. She refocused, determined to conquer the inevitable. Rejection that may come, bolstered by the thought of having Jake with her through it all. As evening descended, she decided to take a break from the computer. Pacing back and forth in her small living room, she felt restless. There was only so much application writing one could do before the weight of her uncertainty became unbearable. Let's go for another walk, she suggested, grabbing Jake's leash. The daylight was dwindling, casting long shadows across the pavement. She hoped the fresh air would clear her mind and ease her doubts. As they strolled through the park, a mysterious fog began to materialize, curling around the trees. It had been a bright day, but now a shift in the atmosphere felt palpable, making her skin creep with apprehension. Other dog owners were beginning to head home, and Jake seemed restless. He tugged at his leash as if he sensed something out of the ordinary. Easy, Jake, she said, but he was fixated on the shadows lurking within the fog. Suddenly, a low growl emanated from behind the trees, making Sarah stop in her tracks. Jake stiffened beside her, and she felt her heart race. What was that? She whispered, scanning the dense fog. The sound was distinctly animalistic, yet deeper than her average dog encounter. Curiosity and fear wrestled within her. Let's go, she urged Jake, who seemed equally unsettled. Yet, before she could turn away, a figure emerged from the mist, a large, majestic dog that staggered into view beneath the low-hanging branches. It was a wolf hybrid, its eyes gleaming like polished amber. Whoa, Sarah breathed, taken aback. The creature appeared lost and out of place, almost ethereal in the twilight. It sniffed the air, and Jake instinctively stepped forward, breaking free from her grasp as if he sensed some connection. No, Jake, she shouted, panic setting in as he darted toward the hybrid. The wolf dog turned to face him, growling softly, but it didn't seem aggressively wary. And just as curious as Jake, to her utter surprise, Jake approached with cautious excitement, as if welcoming a long-lost friend. Sarah's heart raced not with fear for Jake, but with concern for both dogs. She had no idea what would happen next. Hey, buddy, come back, she called, her voice laced with urgency. The hybrid continued to eye Jake skeptically, but made no move to attack. She couldn't bear the thought of her own dog getting too close to a wild animal. Irrespective of its demeanor, Jake, however, was undeterred. The two dogs sniffed each other, Jake wagging his tail, trying to reassure the hybrid. At that moment, Sarah saw something in the wolf's eyes, a glimmer of vulnerability, a desperation for companionship she couldn't ignore. But just as she was about to approach, a loud noise reverberated through the park. A group of rowdy teenagers burst through the fog, laughing and whooping. The wolf dog immediately stiffened in response, its instincts kicking in. Jake, come back, Sarah yelled, panic gripping her throat. The hybrid took a step back, sensing the incoming chaos, and before she realized it, Jake broke off from their gentle introduction and raced toward her. The moment was tense. The hybrid darted into the underbrush, melding seamlessly into the shadows, while Jake dashed back to her side, looking confused but safe. What just happened? Sarah said, exhaling a breath she didn't know she was. Holding, her heart raced, fear mixing with exhilaration. The encounter had been unexpected, almost surreal. She quickly gathered her thoughts, looking around for any sign of the wolf dog. Where did it go? She murmured to Jake, but he was already turning his focus back to her, tail wagging and ready for their next command. Let's go home, she decided, the excitement of the day suddenly feeling inconsequential in light of the extraordinary moment. They turned back toward their apartment, but the encounter with the wolf hybrid stayed etched in her mind, stirring a cocktail of emotions. Once home, Sarah sat on the couch, Jake curled up beside her. She couldn't help but replay the moment. Over and over, why had the wolf been there? What did it mean? She glanced down at Jake, who looked up at her as if asking if she was okay. Yeah, she said quietly, realizing how much she valued this connection they had. It was something special today, wasn't it? But as she tried to shake off the lingering unease, she couldn't ignore the undercurrent of uncertainty permeating her thoughts. Tomorrow she would shoot off more applications and tackle the daily grind, yet there was an unexpected shift inside her. The day had brought both adrenaline and hesitation, revealing a tapestry of challenges yet to unfold. As she drifted into sleep, she felt Jake's warm presence beside her, a reminder that no matter what shadows loomed in the distance, they would face them together. With his comforting weight against her, Sarah closed her eyes, ready to embrace whatever the night or the following day would bring. The wolf lingered on her mind, a symbol of the unknown, and she couldn't help but wonder if it would cross her path again. An unexpected encounter morning arrived with a blend of excitement and trepidation. Sarah felt restless, her mind still spinning from the previous evening's encounter with the mysterious wolf dog. As the sun illuminated her apartment, she could hardly sit still. Today was the day she would send out her final job applications and put herself out there in the best way she knew how. Jake, today is the day, she said almost cheerfully as she prepared for their morning walk. Jake wagged his tail and bounced around her, sensing her energizing excitement. With their usual routine underway, they set out for the park, the air crisp and invigorating. The mist from the previous evening had lifted, revealing a clear blue sky, but even with the beauty of the day, an undercurrent of nervous anticipation lingered in Sarah's chest. What if nothing changed? What if today felt like all the other days of uncertainty? As they entered the park, Jake's energy was palpable. He tore off ahead, eager to explore, and Sarah followed, trying to shake off the shadows of her doubts. She relished the feeling of the sun on her face, allowing the warmth to seep into her worries. After a while, they arrived at the clearing where Sarah had seen the wolf hybrid the day before. The ground was still soft from the recent rain, leaving footprints and paw prints alike indenting the earth. She paused, sensing something in the air. Was it hope or was it fear? Jake, wait, she said softly, noticing him pause and sniff the ground. He looked up as if waiting for her to lead him on. We could always take a different path today. Maybe explore some new areas? But as she turned to suggest a new route, a low growl echoed through the trees, cutting through the serene morning. Sarah's heart raced. Even Jake stood alert, ears perked and body tense. It was the same sound she had heard before, and her instincts told her they weren't alone. Should we go? She whispered. Yet, deep down, curiosity fueled her feet, propelling her toward the noise. Jake remained beside her, unwavering, and together they ventured cautiously toward the source. As they approached the edge of the clearing, the bushes rustled, and there it was the wolf hybrid, but this time it wasn't alone. A second dog, smaller but equally wild-looking, stood beside it, both of them poised and alert. Fear gripped Sarah. What were they doing here? Were they frightened? Aggressive? She felt a mixture of urgency and awe. It's okay, Jake, she reassured him, hoping it would also reassure herself. Let's just stay calm. The hybrid's amber eyes locked onto Sarah, assessing her. As Jake stepped forward, eager to greet his newfound friend. Jake, no! She hissed, clutching his leash, but Jake had already made the decision to approach, much to her amazement. The wolf dog seemed relaxed by Jake's friendly demeanor. The smaller dog, however, appeared more cautious, occasionally glancing towards Sarah as if gauging her intentions. The tension in the air began to thicken, and Sarah realized they were caught in another unexpected moment. With shaky breaths, she slowly knelt down, keeping her movements gentle and non-threatening. Hey there, she said softly, glancing first at Jake and then at the two wild creatures before her. It's all right, we're not here to hurt you. Jake wagged his tail vigorously, sensing the tension dissolve slightly as the larger hybrid took a cautious step forward. There's nothing to be afraid of, she continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. We're friends. See? It seemed to work. The wolf hybrid approached, cautious yet curious, sniffing the air. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. As he came closer, the gracefulness of his movements drawing her into a trance dot just then. The smaller dog mirrored the larger's actions, stepping into Sarah's line of sight. Sarah felt an instinctual desire to reach out, to bridge the gap between human and animal. It's all right, she said, stretching out her hand slowly, palm open. Suddenly, a loud crashing noise broke the moment. From behind the trees, a group of hikers emerged, their voices echoing. The wild dogs immediately stiffened, fear returning to their eyes. Without warning, both animals turned and bolted deeper into the woods, disappearing like shadows in the growing light. Jake, wait! Sarah called, feeling panic flare within her as Jake instinctively chased after them. She tugged on the leash, hoping to hold him back, but he was already racing away, his joyful bark echoing through the trees. Jake! She shouted, nearly tripping over her own feet as she sprinted after him. Breathing heavily, she plunged into the foliage where the wolves had vanished, her heart pounding with a mix of worry and adrenaline. Stay close, buddy, she yelled, but the underbrush made her slow. The world around her melted into a chaotic blur of greens and browns as Jake continued to dash ahead, oblivious to her calls. With a surge of fright, she pressed on, her determination refusing to let her stop. Suddenly, she heard a mixture of growls and barks up ahead, no longer the playful noise she had hoped for. It sounded aggressive, filled with a tension she hadn't anticipated. Pushing through the brush, Sarah stumbled into a small clearing, and there she found Jake facing off against the two wild dogs, their bodies tense and fur bristling. Her heart dropped as she saw fear in Jake's eyes, now uncertain and trapped between instinct and affection. Jake, come back, she yelled, desperation clawing at her throat. But he was locked in a moment, caught between his instinct to connect and the fear emanating from the two hybrids. Back away slowly, she shouted, trying to project calmness. She approached, hoping that her presence would convince him to turn back. As she took a step forward, the smaller hybrid growled, its warning clear, but Sarah couldn't let fear overcome her. No, it's okay. We're all friends here, she pleaded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Jake looked back at her, torn between his innate loyalty to her and his desire to connect with the wild dogs. Jake! She called again, more urgently this time. And suddenly, in a flash of golden fur, he spun around and dashed back to her side, his instincts overtaking any hesitation. Relief washed over her, but the wild dogs remained. Appearing to sense the shift in energy, the larger hybrid circled cautiously. But instead of aggression, Sarah noticed a flicker of curiosity returning to its eyes. She took a deep breath, focusing on what she hoped wouldn't be a mistake. Please believe me. We mean no harm. She kneeled once again, palms facing up, creating a bridge of peace. To her astonishment, the smaller dog edged closer, its fur shimmering in the dappled sunlight. Jake relaxed beside her, sensing his owner's calmness returning. The adrenaline began to ebb, replaced by an understanding she could hardly articulate. But no sooner had she absorbed the moment, when a sudden commotion erupted from behind. The group of hikers had returned, their voices booming through the underbrush. The wild dogs turned their heads in the direction of the sound, fear resurfacing as the hybrids prepared to bolt again. Wait! Sarah shouted, desperate to keep the moment alive. Stay, it's okay. But she was drowned out by the noise, and within an instant, both hybrids dashed back into the woods. Disappearing in a flash. Sarah felt a pang in her chest as she watched them flee, her heart heavy with their flight. Jake turned to her, confusion written across his face. I'm sorry, buddy, she said, running her fingers through his fur. She felt a deep connection to those animals, a shared understanding that transcended words. What just happened? She asked aloud, eyes scanning the empty trees. Were they trying to communicate? Did we lose our chance? As they walked back to the park exit, the thrill of their encounter started to fade, replaced by contemplation and uncertainty. Promises of opportunity felt distant again amid the shadows of what had just transpired, but with Jake trotting by. Her sighed, she realized she couldn't dwell in doubt for long. They had encountered something extraordinary out there, something that left its mark on her spirit. If she could just face those wild instincts today, maybe she could face her next challenge in the same way as they neared home. She glanced back at the park, hopeful that perhaps the hybrids wouldn't be lost forever. Maybe tomorrow she would venture out once more, perhaps only to gain closure or to uncover yet another story in their wild world. With Jake's presence grounding her, Sarah felt a flicker of resolve light within her heart. It was time to confront not just opportunities, but every fragment of uncertainty that accompanied them, and with the sun setting behind her, she felt a renewed conviction as she stepped forward, determined to embrace whatever awaited them next. The journey had only just begun, and with Jake by her side, she was ready to leap into the unknown.